going on, everybody? Thank you for joining me today. I am excited about today's interview because, like most of our previous guests, Kyree Oliver is one of those people who is going to tell it like it is. And that is what I want to continue to bring to this show: complete transparency and honest advice to help you step out of your comfort zone and step into who you were truly meant to be. And I know that he's going to deliver on that for us today. Kyree is a former Division I football player and current digital marketer specializing in Facebook advertising. Although he has generated over $36 million for his clients in the last 3 years, he actually has no traditional marketing training. He's never read a marketing book or taken a marketing course. But what he has done is interviewed almost 900 people, which has made him a master at understanding human behavior and translating that into marketing mastery by being able to understand what causes people to buy and interact with products and services the way that they do. Super excited to bring him on here. He's going to provide a lot of great information and insight for you guys. Here's Kyree. How's it going, man?
Awesome, man. Nice to meet you.
It's great to meet you too, man. We already in a short amount of time at least I've gotten to know a little bit about you, some things that I had no idea, but I'm excited to hear your take on how you do business and how you go about providing results for your clients. But I want you to talk to us about what your journey has been like without any traditional marketing training and how that has really created an abundance of clients and business for you.
Yeah, I think it starts off a lot more difficult because I didn't have like the traditional training. So I didn't know the words to say to people to get them to buy. I didn't know, I didn't really know how to sell my services that well. But when I did find clients, I got amazing results for them. So I started off working with a good friend of mine. He'd hired a marketing company. They were just terrible. Like they completely screwed him over. And so I basically just said, hey, look, let me figure out what they do. And if I can duplicate it and do better than them, then just hire me and pay me a few $100 a month. And so I just got him to hire me. It took me maybe 2 weeks to duplicate what they were already doing, like the results that they were already doing. And then from there, it was just like a humongous upswing. And so maybe 3 or 4 months after that, I started taking on other clients, or at least reaching out to other clients, not very successfully. So not really understanding the marketing side of it was difficult at first, but now it's become a gigantic differentiator where people come work with me when they're tired of marketers. Like that's almost all the people who refer me business. The first thing that they'll say is, hey, so-and-so referred me to you. And they said, you're the person to go to when I'm sick and tired of working with marketers. And I realized that a lot of the things that are wrong with the marketing space, I don't even know about. And I'm not even, they're not even on my radar. Like I don't know how to get over on people some of the ways that other marketers do because I'm really not focused on it. Like, again, it's all human behavior thing for me. So like, I don't, and if you're not in the marketing space, you may not understand, but like, I don't house anybody's advertising accounts under my own name. It's all under their name so that they're open and they have access to it 24/7. They can see what I'm doing. I realized a lot of marketing companies weren't. And so people didn't have access to their actual like metrics and what the company was doing for them. And that was a way that marketers were getting over on people. To me, it just made sense that the person should have access to their own accounts. And it was just kind of an accidental way that I'd set myself apart from other marketers. And that's just one example, but it's like I kind of accidentally became a good business person through just thinking through what's going to be best for serving people.
Love that, man. It reflects the way that you show up in the world, which is awesome. And a traditional, it's a common thing that marketers ruin everything. You're not the first person to bring that up. Actually, John Lee Dumas, who we had on here, said the same exact thing. I'm curious though. So what were you doing when you were interviewing almost 900 people? What did that do for you and your business? What did that entail?
Oh my gosh. So the point of it was to really get a good grasp of myself. Like it's kind of started off as a selfish thing of like, okay, I know I want to help people. I don't know exactly how I want to help people. And I don't think that I have the the experience to help them in the way that I want to. So how do I go find a bunch of experience in a very short amount of time? And I realized like I just start talking to people. And so I started off with like friends and family. And then I started doing like doctors, lawyers, my friend's uncle happened to be this like hedge fund manager and had managed like $3-4 billion. It's like, ooh, I want to talk to him. I've interviewed 3 death row inmates. I conducted 65 end of life interviews. So for like terminal patients who were going to die within the next 90 days, I was able to conduct interviews with them, and none of it ever stemmed around business. It was legitimately just like who you are as a person. What do you believe to be true about yourself and the world around you? What do you fear? What do you regret? What keeps you up at night? What do you want said in your eulogy? Like just questions that would really just pop up in my head about who you are and how you show up in the world. And I realized just through the process, like I started picking up on a lot of trends on how we do things, how we conduct ourselves, how we view ourselves, how we react to certain stimuli, how we react to like different situations in life. And it just started really painting a picture of us as human beings to me.
That's amazing. So were you documenting, like, were you recording these things, documenting these things?
I did the first 12 and then I stopped. I realized 2 things when I was recording. One, I wasn't paying as much attention because I did the whole like, well, I can just listen back later since it's being recorded, knowing that I never would listen back. The second was they weren't as open when they knew that I was recording something. And so because it was being recorded, I felt people pulling back. Whenever I'd ask them maybe a follow-up question to something and try to dig a little bit deeper, you could tell they didn't want, there was a hesitance because it was being recorded. And so I wanted to remove that because I wanted the genuine from people. And so I stopped recording and really just like, hey, I'm going to trust that whatever needs to stick will stick. And I still to this day, throughout my day, I'll hear something or I'll think of something and it reminds me of a specific interview. And I remember sitting across from that person. I remember sitting on the computer with that person. I remember the experience with that person. And so it still to this day pops up and is still like very relevant to me.
Interesting. So it was like more personal documentation than really meant for business growth or anything. It was just you wanted your own database of knowledge from various different types of people.
Yeah, I didn't even know what a podcast was at the time. I realize now it would have been an amazing podcast,
Yeah.
but I didn't even know what a podcast was, nor did I have the money to even start one. So it was like, yeah, it was just all kind of my own now internal personal database. But, I've had somebody ask, like, what if somebody says that you're full of shit for saying that you've interviewed 900 people? To me, the only answer is come experience me, like talk to me and hear the way that I think. I'm only 25. I just turned 25. I don't think or act like a normal 25-year-old. That should give you at least a clue in on maybe I've got some experiences collected in my head that aren't just my own.
Interesting, man. I just related to you so hard on that. I'm only 23, and I've done probably 100 interviews now. Most of them are documented, recorded, but it's so powerful. I always say how powerful podcasting is, even just like the interviewing process. It's basically, we had a previous guest on before who said it's basically a free consultation session. Like you are allowing them to share their message, but they're also giving you information that you may not have known previously. So I love that. And it really does kind of like spark that ingenuity and kind of different way of thinking, which you show all the time.
Yeah. Well, think about like if you had walked up to John Lee Dumas in the middle of the street and asked to interview him, he'd be like, hell no, go away, get away from me. You're a weirdo.
Yeah.
So it provides you that availability to people.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it, man. No, it's cool. It's so cool. I'm curious what your philosophy is on controversy in marketing, and how do you find that your personality, being someone who's very open and honest, translates into the marketing you do for your clients?
Yeah. I realize a lot of it has to do with, I think of persuasion. And like whenever we're selling to somebody, we're persuading in some way, shape, or form. Some people manipulate. I choose to only stay in kind of that realm of persuasion. We're not using any falsehood. We're not using any hyperbole when we're talking. It's like we're being very genuine, but it's all persuasion. So if I can submit a topic to my audience that on the surface they disagree with, but inside of our dialogue, we can find a common ground. I can then sell to that person. And so I just do it consistently through my content. The one thing that I do and I make sure I hold is it's something I genuinely believe. Like I post some things that may be seen as like as trolling. It genuinely never is. Like even if it's seen like that, I tell people it just gives you a good view of who I am. Like I've had people unfriend me, I've had people block me because of things I said, because they know for a fact it's something I genuinely believe. And so I'm not big on trolling posts. I'm not big on being controversial just for the sake of being controversial. I want to see the conversation. And what I realize is nobody else is having them. So why don't I become a platform for it? Why don't I talk about the things that we're not supposed to talk about? And I'll tell you my genuine belief on that thing, whether it's up front in the status or later in the comments. I'm almost always going to follow up with here's how I believe this thing to be, because I think that's important. Like I want to stay consistent with how I view things, how I project myself out, but I mostly want to create the dialogue.
What's been the feedback from those conversations?
I'd say I'm have a very mixed bag, and I'm actually really happy about it because I've been accused before of having like an echo chamber of like a bunch of people who just agree with me. And the only thing I can say to that is I wouldn't have 300 comments on this thing if everybody agreed. Like it just never happens. The only way that you're able to create dialogue is having about the same number of people who agree versus the people who disagree or choose to challenge what I say. So I that's something I always want to maintain as well, is I want to make sure that I'm not only speaking to people who already agree with me.
Love it. Huge lesson there. I think it's a major fear in a lot of people's minds to truly be themselves, especially in a global platform like social media is. So
Yeah.
definitely condone you for doing that. It's awesome. What do you think prevents people who started in similar circumstances to you or have been on a similar journey to you from getting to where you are now?
I think it's two things. It's either too hard and they choose to do something else that's a little bit easier, or they get pulled in the direction of the alluring, like quick win. I think the quick win really messes a lot of people, especially our age, up. It's like you see this video and a dude who's talking about I made 100 grand my first 30 days and doing this thing, and I'll teach you how to do the same. And a lot of people get trapped in that, or they get trapped in a cycle of it where it's like, okay, that guy was full of shit, but maybe this next guy's going to really teach me how to make 100 grand in 30 days. So I think it's either it gets too hard and they pivot into something else, or they see the quick win from somebody else who's probably lying about it, and they say, oh, I want that. I think there's a big disrespect for hard work right now. And I tell people, you don't have to do it the same way I did it. And I wouldn't even probably suggest doing it the same way I did it. But I spent about a year and a half doing like 20-hour days, just learning marketing, I was driving for Lyft and Uber at the same time. Like I was just putting in insane amounts of work. And I attribute a lot of that to where I am right now. But most of it was learning how to pivot intelligently and learning how to actually dig into the market and what exactly do they want to see? Where do I find holes in the market where I can help fill and serve? Those were probably the biggest points where I started to up-level my business, not just being busy for 20 hours a day.
Interesting. I want to touch on that a little bit. So you said you were driving for Lyft and Uber, right? Which is some people listening to this may be doing, or some form of another source of revenue. What was what was that thing that kind of allowed you to stop driving for Lyft or Uber and consistently get clients that sustained your lifestyle, that sustained your cash flow?
I didn't. I stopped driving for Lyft and Uber right when I moved to Arizona in 2016. It was April 5th, 2016. I moved down to Arizona. I stopped driving for Lyft and Uber because I was registered in San Francisco, and I told myself I was not going to re-register in Arizona. Like, this is me burning the boat. I'm moving to a new state. I'm from Northern California. I'm moving to a new state with my business partner. We're going to dive all in. And it took from April of that year until March of 2017 for me to get like make over like $4,000 in a month. Before that, I was $2,500 here, $2,000 the next month, maybe 3,000 if I was super lucky. But it wasn't going straight from Lyft and Uber to being successful. There was like a full year after already struggling for 3 years. There was a whole other year after that of like, okay, I'm kind of picking up ground. I'm learning the business space, but it's not successful yet. I don't think I hit six figures until um, July of 2017, I want to say, was like the first time I made $8,000 in a month, which still that's not a six-figure income because it's not consistent. But it was like the first time I'd like, oh, wow, it's 8,000 or 8,400 or whatever makes, 100,000 a year. But I also realized as soon as it happened, I was like, okay, that's not enough. Like I'm not fulfilled. I'm not driven by money either, which is a interesting way of being. Because it's not being driven by money, but still having the drive to move forward and grow the business and do better and get bigger clients. It's an interesting one.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting conversation, one that we could probably have at another time because I'd love to dig into your take on how you can still be, a capitalist but not be driven by money.
Yep.
Super interesting conversation. But it sounds like you took a leap of faith by moving states, focus 100% on your agency, which then in turn turned into the success that you've been having for it sounds like a couple years now.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. What do you see being the number one most important business growth strategy in the next 2 years?
Introspection. At all points, ever, anytime is introspection. Where am I genuinely? I was just listening to a comedian right before we hopped on this on a podcast, and he was talking about the beauty of people pooping. It was such a weird concept, and I really love
Trevor Noah. Was it Trevor Noah?
Oh.
I literally just posted about that today.
So he was on Hot. Have you seen Hot Ones?
Of course, I've seen Hot Ones.
I was just watching Hot Ones just before we hopped on, and he was talking about the beauty of pooping.
How everyone's created equal.
Yes, and I was like, it's such a humbling experience, but I think that just looking at yourself in the mirror does the same thing. Like literally having to sit alone with yourself, that's what makes you come to grips with like, oh, this is who I am. It's not the persona online. It's not who I put myself off to be in front of my friends, in front of my family. Like, oh shit, this is me and this is what I have to work with. I think spending as much of your time as possible doing that, especially if you're not successful yet, will be the biggest thing you could possibly do. Keeping that same energy when you are successful is a million times harder and even more important. So I still do it. I still take 3 hours a week and I sit and I stare at myself.
Interesting. I haven't heard that strategy before.
I did it for a year and a half when I was living in a trailer.
Wow.
Yeah, I was living in my ex-girlfriend's dad's old duck hunting trailer. Like we were broken up and I still lived on their property in her dad's old trailer. And I'd come home from work. I worked in special education and I'd clear out, like turn the TV off. My phone was across the trailer and I had it was like a queen size bed and there's maybe like 5 inches in between the bed and the like outer wall. And it's the closet. And they're just like sliding glass mirrors. So I would just sit on the edge of the bed and just stare at myself. And all of your shit comes up when you do that.
Yep.
Scary thing.
Yeah, it is. It's uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable thing, which people tend to avoid, which I've been having a lot of conversations about lately, actually. Introspection, guys. Introspection is Kyree's most important business growth strategy for the next 2 years. We are going to take a short break. And then we will be right back for some rapid fire questions and get to know him even a little bit more. All right, we are back with Mr. Kyree, who has been providing some amazing insights on what it takes to create a successful agency, what he's gone through, and some strategies on how to implement your real personality into what you do every single day. Kyree, I want to ask you some rapid fire questions. Just get to know you a little bit better. It's going to be 5 simple questions. We'll get into it when you're ready, man.
Down.
What is one non-negotiable habit you implement every single day?
I play with my dogs.
What is one book you wish everyone in the world would read?
Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
On what do you like to spend your time and money outside of business?
Cigars and whiskey.
What is the most memorable experience you've ever had?
Mm. Most memorable experience I've ever had.
Good or bad?
There's one guy, he had made $14 billion over his entire life. This is one of my end of life interviews. And I asked him if he could go back and change one thing, what would he change? And the first thing he said, he's like, can I change three things? I was like, okay, let's play with this. And he's like, I've got three sons. I was so busy with money that I had never gone to any one of their baseball practices or games. I would show up to at least one practice of each one of my sons because I think that would have made at least a little bit of a difference. His sons hadn't visited him in 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
$14 billion with no relationship with his children.
Zero. And 6 wives. All 3 of his sons were with his first wife, and he had 6 wives total. And he said he hated every single one of them, and they hated him back. And his sons he's 88 years old. His sons hadn't seen him since like 3 years before he went into the convalescent home that he was in.
Wow.
Yeah. But I think that's doing those interviews gave me such like a disrespect for money of like, oh, it doesn't matter at all. It matters only in the way that you're able to use it. But like just sitting there accumulating it does nothing for you.
Love it. What is the most insightful or actionable event you've ever been to?
Event. I'd say it's an amalgam of like 6 or 7 different small ones that I've been to. Everybody's super excited about like the big Tony Robbins events or the big Brendan Burchard events, the 10X Growth Con BS. Go to the events with like 20 to 50 people, and that's when you experience like genuine change.
Second person to say that in the last day.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. Love it. Intimate events compared to large events. Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, large events are all energy. It's a vacuum of energy. And as soon as you leave, that's why people get depressed when they leave those big events. It's like this visceral thing that you cannot recreate anywhere else. Whereas the intimate events, you can recreate that over a video call. You can recreate that at any point in your life.
Amazing. Amazing. That's Kyree Oliver, everyone. He is the guy who's always honest, always creating what seems to be controversy, but it is his real honest opinion about what he thinks to be true in the world, his perception of how people act, what things are right and wrong in the world, and he just happens to be really good at Facebook advertising. Kyree, I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
Since we're on the topic of end of life interviews, in your short 25 years of being on this earth, what would you have gone back and changed?
At this point, nothing. I don't think any of the big bad things that I can think of. I don't think I'd be the person I am without them. And maybe that sounds cliche, but yeah, I wouldn't change any of those simply because I genuinely enjoy who I am now. And I think every single one of those was a piece of who I am.
Incredible. Not cliche at all. It's amazing. All right, Kyree, where can everybody find you? Where can they interact with all of your awesome content that I love a lot?
I appreciate it. So most of it's on like my personal Facebook page. And that's facebook.com/Kyree Oliver 1994. Instagram, just at Kyree, Kyree. And that's pretty much it. I'm getting my fan page, my public figure page back up and starting to produce content, but it's not there yet. So everything's on my personal profile for right now.
Cool. Well, if you like real, honest, sometimes controversial things, follow him. Follow him, reach out to him. He has some amazing stories that we didn't even get into today that I'm sure he would love to share with you. You will find all of this stuff in the show notes. If you go to lvrg.it, it'll be in our blog. It'll be in the show notes on Pippa Podcast, which I'll put in this episode. And I'll also put in the links to his Facebook profile and stuff like that. So, Kyree, thanks for your time today, man. It's been great. Thanks for the insightful information you share with the audience.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Cheers, everyone.